To join me. As these candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. I'd like to ask Sherry, who has been so active in our congregation, to come forward and to light the candles and invite people to rise as we recite the prayer for the Shabbat candles.
Amen.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Sherry.
Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Amen.
We move to the welcoming of Shabbat with a song, Shiru l'Adonai, sing unto God, a new song. Every day is that opportunity. It is a new song when we begin. We welcome everyone to join with us on page 3.
Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. Sing unto God, all the earth, a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God, and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. I will sing unto God a new song.
We continue with the next song in our welcoming of the Sabbath, songs that bring us into the sense of the power of this moment of welcoming the Sabbath. On page 4, Adonai Malach Yirgazu Amin. Adonai enthroned on cherubim is sovereign. Peoples tremble, the earth quakes. Adonai is great in Zion and exalted above all peoples.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu le'hakodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu le'hakodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Adonai Eloheinu romemu, romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu le'hakodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu le'hakodsho.
Cantor, we're going to choose the verses of the Lecha Dodi, the quintessential welcome of the Sabbath bride, on page 5 and 6. Which verses will we recite?
We shall recite, Rabbi. Let's see. I think 1, 2, 5, and 9.
1, 2, 5, and 9.
And since
Join
this
us.
is our Leonard Cohen Shabbat. Lecha Dodi likrat kala ene Shabbat lekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'diborecha Hishme'anu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad b'shem u'tiferet v'litchila Lecha Dodi likrat kala ene Shabbat nekabela. Verse 2. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mekor habaracha merosh mekedem nesucha sof maseh b'maksheva techila lecha dodi likrat kala ene Shabbat nekabela. That was the page turn. Verse 5. Hitoreri, ki va'orechu miori. Uri, shidaberi, kevod Adonai elayich nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala ene Shabbat nekabela. We'll go to verse 9, and if it is your custom, please rise to greet the Sabbath bride. Oiv shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha u'b'tzola toch emunei am segula boi chala lecha dodi likrat kala ene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala ene Shabbat nekabela.
Thank you. And we are seated and we join together in the psalm that is the quintessential psalm of thanks and captures the mood of the Sabbath. A song for the Shabbat on page 7. Let's read it together in English. It is good to praise Adonai,
to sing hymns to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night, with the 10-stringed harp, the voice, and the lyre together. You have gladdened me by your deeds, Adonai. I shout for joy at your handiwork. How great are your works,
Adonai.
how subtle your designs.
A
A brute cannot know, a fool cannot understand this.
The
The righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in the courts of our God. In old age, they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no wrong.
We turn to the Chetzi Kaddish at this time, which will introduce the Amidah. Page 9, Chetzi Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabba,
Amen.
ve'olma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, bagala, uv'izman kariv, ve'imeru, Amen. Yehesh me Rabba mevarach, ve'allam ulal me'almaya, Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal, shemei dekudesha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma, ve'imeru, Amen.
Please rise and join with us in the Baruch.
Yai la 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 yai la yai la 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 yai la yai la 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 yai la 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 yai la 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 yai la yai la 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 yai la Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach Baruch Adonai hamevorach hamevorach le'olam va'ed hamevorach hamevorach le'olam va'ed.
Praise you, Adonai, our God, for whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars, creator of tide and light. You guide the current of day and night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evenings flow. We continue with the Chatimah.
El Chai v'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai, Hamari V'Aravim.
We continue with the second prayer actually the third prayer in the Shema, to the melody of Dance Me
To the end of love.
to the End of Love. If you'd like to be seated on page 11. Ahava Rabbah.
Gotta get it. Hold on. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu B'shulchenu v'kumenu נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. Ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ki haim chayenu beyorech yamenu ובהם נגע יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל.
Thank you, Cantor. What a beautiful use of that melody and the fitting, appropriate use of the melody on that prayer. I'm sure that we'll have more to say about that. We join together and invite people that want to rise for the Shema on page 12 and join together as we recite the watchwords of our faith.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. And even though it isn't on your pages, we keep going. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We join in the prayers of the Mi Chamocha on page 14 at the top. You can be seated, please.
Let's see, which Mi Chamocha shall we do this evening? It's the one thing that I've not found a good Leonard Cohen adaptation of. So let's go with a good old-fashioned Debbie Friedman.
She's great.
He אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. We turn to the prayer that concludes in the evening, the Shema at the bottom of page 15. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, al kol amo Yisrael, v'al kol bnei Adam, v'al Yerushalayim. Amen.
Amen.
We chant the Shamru on page 16.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם, עוד היא לעולם, עוד היא לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We rise for the Amidah on page 17 and join with the cantor as he leads us in the first three prayers of the Amidah.
Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל העליון, גומר חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה, רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים. ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממיד ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום, יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
pause for a few moments. You may be seated as we reflect, and we are give you a moment to reflect. Cantor will conclude the Amidah with the prayer Shalom, Shalom Rav, and we recite the prayer of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai she'otcha levadcha v'yira na'avod. Let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you will find new strength for you and for your service. We'll conclude the prayer for peace. Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech haTov lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech haTov lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam.
It is our privilege this evening to welcome my longtime friend, Dr. Richard Hecht, who, because of a foot injury, is not here with us in person. He's in Santa Barbara. We are going to be listening to him and to the cantor as they have woven the message of Leonard Cohen's work into both the songs and the words that Richard will deliver tonight. I want to say that I've known Richard from the first day I went to rabbinical school in the fall of 1970 or 69, I don't remember anymore, to this very day. We've been friends and have traveled in Poland. We're almost in daily contact. He is a scholar's scholar. Beyond the fact that he has written some of the most important work in the area of the understanding of what are the main factors in the study of Jerusalem and the issues of specifically the study of the city of Jerusalem, who I consulted in some work that I did in the 90s. He has been the person who has worked with some of the greatest minds thinking about the impact of the history of religion, how religion is practiced, and in a very profound way during the years where he was on the publications committee for the University of Chicago. brought some of the most important publications of the University of California. Did I say Chicago? Yeah, I'm helping my grandson with that application. University of California. He has worked with the University of California in bringing hundreds of publications that would have been languishing because of the peculiar slant the publications committee had until Richard came. Produced numerous PhD students and many more books that I've not listed. We are in for a treat. I will allow Richard to frame his version of what he wants to say about Leonard, because however I frame it, he will tell me, well, that's just not quite what I wanted to say. And so let Richard speak for Richard, and we are going to enjoy these moments. Richard is going to speak for about a half hour, interspersed with cantor, and also there's going to be some music that's going to be played. I'm going to come down and join people in the community. Richard, welcome to Beth Ohr. We look forward to taking you out and having you in person. And welcome, Cantor Andy. With unmute, Richard. Here we go. 1 second. Good.
Almost there. 1 second.
Almost there.
Bam, bam, Rabbi, bam.
Bam. So one of the things that we have an ongoing conversation about is that we have spent Friday mornings together for, I think, well, certainly for the entire pandemic. And is it working?
It won't unmute.
Uh-oh.
There we go.
Okay. There you go. Richard, you're on.
Thank you, Haim. And thank you, Andy, for preparing the music. And I don't know, Andy, do you want to start with one of the songs that you've prepared?
Sure. I'll have to keep muting you so that we don't end up with a little wraparound. Rabbi, can I put you in charge of muting?
Oh, I'm good at that.
And unmute as well. The little button that says mute. Richard, which one would you like to start with? A little Who by Fire, perhaps?
Sure, we could do Who by Fire.
Okay. So, Rabbi Haim, if you could mute the TV for a second. Actually, you know what? Maybe I can do it from here. How about that? Look at that. I have the power. Who by fire? Who by water? Who in the sunshine? Who in the nighttime? Who by high ordeal? Who by common trial? Who in your merry, merry month of May? Who by very slow decay? And who shall I say is calling? And who in her lonely slip? Who by barbiturate? Who in these realms of love? Who by something blunt? Who by avalanche? Who by powder? Who for his greed? Who for his hunger? And who shall I say is calling? And who by brave ascent? Who by accident? Who in solitude? Who in this mirror? has laid his command, who by his own hand, who in mortal chains, who in power, and who shall I say is calling?
Thank you, Cantor. Can the congregation see my slides? Is that possible? I don't know. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I want to start with just a biographical or autobiographical comment. I remember as a child being in my synagogue with my parents, and I only remember two things about the High Holy Days, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. One is the power of Kol Nidre on the evening of Yom Kippur, because I remember that was so powerful because all of the people around me in the synagogue were in tears. And the other thing I remember about the High Holy Days from my childhood was the recitation of the Unatana Tokef, upon which, of course, Leonard Cohen's "Who by Fire" is an interpretation. And so I want to talk about why it is that interpretation by Leonard Cohen is so powerful. It's very interesting that as I looked on the gallery and I saw some of my friends from the Torah study group with Rabbi Haim, everyone knew the words of "Who by Fire" and were singing it along. And so I want to try to say something about what makes up the power of this extraordinary composition by Leonard Cohen. And you see that I titled this playing off of "Who by Fire" as "and who by word." So I think it's in the words. Obviously, it's a poem first, and then it was set to music. And I want to begin with a eulogy that was written by Ruth Weiss, and it appeared in Mosaic at the end of November of 2016, shortly after Leonard Cohen passed away. And she had met him when she was a student, an undergraduate student at McGill University in Montreal in the 1950s. And their careers went in different directions. So Ruth Weiss became a very, very significant Jewish studies scholar working in the field of Yiddish literature. And of course, Leonard Cohen went into this wonderful career of music and being one of our great balladeers of the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, until his death in 2016. And in Commentary magazine in 1995, Ruth Weiss wrote a long essay, and I really recommend that you read it. It's one of the most extraordinary pieces of reflection on what life in the academic world in Montreal, and then her career and her relationship to Leonard Cohen. She titled it for Commentary magazine, "My Life Without Leonard Cohen," and it's from October of 1995. And in that essay, she really describes this difference between Leonard Cohen's universalism and her particularism. And so when she wrote this eulogy in 2016, her attitude toward Leonard Cohen had changed dramatically. And I want to just read a paragraph. So she writes, trying to explain the difference and how the difference collapsed as she got to know Leonard Cohen's work more completely. She wrote, for his expanding audience, he was also emerging as exactly the type of archetypal Jew they required. An early record, New Skin for the Old Ceremony, from 1974, included a eulogy for Janis Joplin, an adaptation of Greensleeves and Who by Fire, instantaneously recognizable even to once-a-year synagogue goers as an adaptation of the most familiar prayer of the Yom Kippur liturgy, foretelling the soon-to-be sealed fate of who shall live and who shall die. Fans who already liked Cohen responded to him as a kind of Jew, while younger Jews, hungry for cultural confirmation, idolized him as their musical champion. I Had Wanted a Kohen, a hit single, was more than enough to make him both priest and prophet. Once more, I, who had set up a dichotomy on the basis of how each of us served the Jewish people, had to acknowledge which of us was the anointed one. The world might claim him, but Jews made Leonard Cohen their own. That's a very, I think, powerful statement. And it's a kind of apology for her misunderstanding of Leonard Cohen in the commentary article of 1995. And so one fundamental question that we have to ask ourselves is, what accounts for the popularity of Leonard Cohen today? I remember him as a wonderful singer with great songs, romantic songs, songs of loss, songs of hope from the 60s and early 70s. But then I forgot about him until 2012, when I went to see a concert of his that lasted almost 5 hours at the Kodak Theater. I think that was the venue across from the Staples Center at the time. It was extraordinary. And so part of his popularity for us today is this last tour that began in 2012 and continued until 2013. But some people who know Leonard Cohen far, far better than I do say that the last concert tour continued almost to his death. So that's number one. Leonard Cohen staged this world tour that went on and on and on. The second thing is that Who by Fire, that Cantor sang for us, is included among the study texts for Yom Kippur in this great machzor that the Central Conference of American Rabbis, the Mishkan HaNefesh, published in 2015. So there, this poem is elevated alongside all of these very important historical figures and contemporary rabbis and Jewish thinkers. So that's number two. Then, of course, there is this wonderful film that probably some of you have already seen entitled Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen, A Journey, a Song, that came out this year, directed by Dan Giller and Dana Goldfein. I've seen it 3 times. And it's one of the only films that I actually stayed in the theater to see it twice. So I stayed one afternoon and then I stayed for the second screening of it. And I've watched it a third time, I think on one of the streaming services. So that film has had an enormous impact. My rabbi here in Santa Barbara, Rabbi Stephen Cohen, delivered an extraordinarily powerful Yom Kippur sermon on seeing that film. And I don't think he was an isolated case by any means. So that's the third, perhaps, point having to do with Cohen's popularity today. A second or a fourth possibility is a book by Monty Cohen, which is titled "Who by Fire?" Leonard Cohen in the Sinai, published this year. And I'm sure many of you read the reviews of this, but it, of course, describes how Leonard Cohen, who had toured in Israel in 1972, was on the island of Hydra when the Yom Kippur War broke out in 1973, and he flew to Israel. He spent almost the entire period of the war singing to soldiers who were stationed in the Sinai, and then he actually crossed the canal and sang to soldiers who were deployed on the western bank of the Suez Canal. And it was a year later that Cohen produced the first version of "Who by Fire," which Cantor Henry sang for us, and that we know so well. So here is the text, and I'm not going to read the text because we sort of sang it and listened to Cantor sing it. What I would add, that part of the power of this song is its musical composition. And some of you who may have purchased one of the albums from that 2012-2013 concert tour know that for this song, there is a long, nearly 8-minute preface by Javier Mas playing a medieval Spanish instrument called the arquelao, which is essentially a 12-string guitar. And it's just extraordinary. But what does that do? Well, I grew up in an Ashkenazic home. And one of the things that is done with Javier Mas is he shifts the cultural venue of "Who by Fire" to a kind of Mediterranean Sephardic world, which makes it unusually different for those of us who've grown up in the Ashkenazic tradition. And of course, he has the lyrics of the Webb sisters and also Sharon Robinson, who worked with Leonard Cohen on much of the lyrics for the world tour. So even though we can say maybe this accounts for the popularity of Leonard Cohen a bit, but one of the things that Mati Friedman writes is, and this is his itinerary of the song. He writes about "Who by Fire." The prayer had traveled from a synagogue in the violent world of medieval Europe to the placid Gate of Heaven in Montreal. Gate of Heaven was the name of the synagogue that Leonard Cohen grew up in Montreal, where it was heard by a child in the 1940s, and then mixed with the experience of the cultural tumult of America in the 1960s and of a catastrophe in Israel. And then it migrated back into the synagogue, where it is today as part of our liturgy. Now, after Leonard Cohen had composed the music and the poem of "Who by Fire," one of the distinguished musicians of contemporary Israel, Yair Rosenblum, composed his own version of the Unatana Tokef after he visited Kibbutz Beit HaShita, which I believe they had lost 17 men in the Yom Kippur War. And as I recall the story from Mati Friedman, Yair Rosenblum had gone to the kibbutz to mark the yahrzeit of those men who had been killed in the war. And then Friedman points out that a contemporary Israeli singer, Aya Korem, put the Rosenblum and the Leonard Cohen composition together. So I'd like to try to play it. And if the technology works here, you'll hear a bit of about 48 seconds worth of Yair Rosenblum, and then Aya Coram translating Who by Fire into contemporary Hebrew. And we'll just listen to maybe a minute and 15 seconds of this, and then we can come back. So let me see if I can get this. Okay. It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to play that. So you'll have to take my word for it that indeed Aya Coram puts this composition together, joining in modern Hebrew, Who by Fire, and also the Rosenblum version of the Unatana Tokef, which in and of itself is a kind of revolutionary synthesis of not only Ashkenazic music, but Sephardic music as well. But that still leaves my question. What makes Leonard Cohen's version of the Unatana Tokef so powerful that I would remember it for half a century or more? Why is it that all of us are moved by it? I'm sorry, I've never spoken to anyone who said, well, I don't like it. I'd rather stay with the traditional Unatana Tokef sung in the Nigun for the high holidays. And I want to, in responding to this question, point to a very well-known text that is in the Mishnah in Tractate Avot, and it's in the 3rd chapter, the 15th Mishnah, where we read the following. Rabbi Akiva would say, everything is foreseen, yet freedom is given. And the Hebrew for that is Hakol Safui v'harishut nituna. And the world is judged by goodness, and everything is evaluated by the preponderance of good deeds. And so I've misunderstood this text my entire life until I heard Leonard Cohen, because I've always assumed that everything is foreseen is a kind of deterministic understanding of how history and life works, and yet freedom is given. That's the free will argument. And I've always thought that our tradition has never been able to figure out which of these is the right version of whether our life is determined or whether we have free will. And I've misunderstood it because the tradition never figured out which one is correct. The power of Rabbi Akiva's statement and why people return to this, everything is foreseen, yet freedom is given, Hakol Safui v'harishut netuna, is precisely because the tradition doesn't want to resolve it. It holds it in a creative tension. For us, the power of Rabbi Akiva's words is, it's not that one overcomes the other. And that makes me think of how we try to resolve conflicts or oppositions, or to use the technical term, antinomies in our thinking. And there are only 3 ways that we resolve these oppositions. One is by a resolution of dominance in which one overcomes the other, a resolution by synthesis, kind of the Marxist way of understanding these antinomies, producing thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And then finally, the Jewish tradition comes to the conclusion of no resolution to oppositions or antinomies, but rather keeping them in a creative tension. So you can think of these within our tradition: sacred and profane, center and periphery, memory and forgetfulness, male and female, presence and absence, light and darkness, chaos and order, clean and unclean, pure and impure. And the greatness of, I think, or the uniqueness of the Jewish tradition is precisely that it does not resolve these antinomies. The sacred never overcomes the profane never overcomes the sacred, the center never overcomes the periphery never overcomes the center. They're held in a creative tension. Now, let me give you some examples of that tension that we can see in representational art. I'm sure everyone recognizes this piece, right? This photograph by Andre Serrano, which created such a stir in the early 1990s and throughout much of its history. It's called Piss Christ. And Serrano, this genius photographer, had a 7.5-inch plastic cheap crucifix that he put into a mason jar filled with his own urine, and he photographed it. And it's a beautiful photograph, absolutely stunning when you see it. Now, of course, it created a controversy. So I include here Senator Alphonse D'Amato. Some of you may remember him from New York. What a wonderful person he was. And he said the following of Andre Serrano's, the piece in question is a large, vivid photograph of Christ on a crucifix submerged in the artist's urine. This work is shocking, abhorrent, and completely undeserving and completely without undeserving of any recognition whatsoever. Millions of taxpayers are rightfully incensed that their hard-earned dollars were used to honor and support Serrano's work. Now, I can point to other artists who join the profane and the sacred together, as Serrano has done here. Some of you, this is a sort of cartoon that I included because I had it in my file. There's Piss Poor, You're in the Money, Pissant, and there's Serrano over there on the right side of the slide. These are some of the early works that preceded the one we just saw. But some of you may have seen this extraordinary installation by Robert Gober in the Geffen Contemporary Museum in the 1990s. And it's an extraordinary work, but it created a huge stir because Gober put this culvert pipe through the abdomen of the Virgin Mary. And of course, the Catholic community in Los Angeles was incensed. But once again, Gober is working here with the sacred and the profane in tension. I can just show you one or two more slides of this. Here is Gober working on the maquette and the statue of the Virgin Mary, which he took really from Bernini's Ecstasy of Saint Teresa at the Church of Santa Maria della Vittoria in Rome. And so here is the Virgin Mary about to be pierced by the arrow of ecstasy. So Gober was working with this classical piece of statuary in creating his version of the Virgin. Or here is another example by Chris O'Feely, the East African artist who lives in the United Kingdom, Ireland at the present time, his Holy Virgin Mary. This was exhibited in 1996 in the Brooklyn Museum, and I believe that Mayor Rudolph Giuliani was the mayor of New York at the time, and he was very upset because O'Feely had put globs of elephant dung all over the Virgin Mary. And he was so incensed by how dare this artist put elephant dung on the Virgin Mary. Well, he didn't understand that elephant dung is a sign of enormous power. But what he missed was that Chris O'Feely had cut out small little photographs from cheap pornographic magazines of female genitalia and put them all over the painting. So again, artists have been working with the very same kind of creative tension that is left unresolved. Now, I'm going to ask Cantor to sing Everybody Knows. And I want to point out this tension again in this piece. Cantor.
I will ask Eli. There we go. Eli unmuted. Okay, thank you. Everybody knows that the dice are loaded. Everybody rolls with their fingers crossed. Everybody knows the war is over. Everybody knows the good guys lost. Everybody knows the fight was fixed. The poor stay poor, the rich get rich. That's how it goes. Everybody knows. Everybody knows that the boat is leaking. Everybody knows that the captain lied. Everybody got this broken feeling, like their father or their dog just died. Everybody talking to their pockets. Everybody wants a box of chocolates and a long stem rose. And everybody knows. Everybody knows that you love me, baby. Everybody knows that you really do. Everybody knows that you've been faithful, give or take a night or two. Everybody knows you've been discreet, but there were just so many people you had to meet without your clothes. And everybody knows. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. That's how it goes. Everybody knows. Everybody knows that it's now or never. Everybody knows it's me or you. Everybody knows that you live forever when you've done a little line or two. Everybody knows the deal is rotten. Old Black Joe's still picking cotton for your ribbons and bows. Everybody knows. Everybody knows the plague is coming. Everybody knows it's moving fast. Everybody knows the naked man and woman are just a shining artifact of the past. Everybody knows the scene is dead, but there's gonna be a meter on your bed that will disclose what everybody knows. And everybody knows that you're in trouble. Everybody knows what you've been through. From the bloody cross on top of Calvary to the beach of Malibu. Everybody knows it's coming apart. Take one last look at this sacred heart before it blows. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. That's how it goes. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. That's how it goes. Everybody knows.
Thank you, Cantor. So here the opposition, and I'm gonna be finished in just a minute or two. Here are the oppositions that are held in tension with one another. It's a kind of epistemological conflict. So we think we know, but we already know, right? That's not the case. So there's this collective secret that we're all plugged into. We think we know, but it's not really the case, right? And Leonard Cohen puts these ideas that we think we know, but we know there's something else going on. Remember, everyone knows the game is crooked. Everyone rolls the dice with their fingers crossed. And then, of course, if we missed all of that, he comes back to this opposition of sacred and profane when he writes, everybody knows what you've been through, from the bloody cross on the top of Calvary. There's your religious geography smashing into a kind of secular geography, the beach at Malibu. Everybody knows it's coming apart. Take one last look at this Sacred Heart before it blows, and everybody knows. Now, we were going to do If It Be Your Will, and I don't think we're going to do that. I've taken too much time already, but it's worth looking at because that is a kind of liturgical formulation that is drawn from much of the Amidah that we recite. And then this extraordinary little almost mini essay called Holy Is Your Name, which is the Kedusha. Holy, holy art thou, Lord of hosts, whose glory fills the entire earth. So he has this amongst in his liturgy. And it reminds one a great deal of Allen Ginsberg's footnote to Howl from the 1950s, where he begins holy, 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 and then he says everything in the world is holy. Does he really mean that Moscow is holy, or is that part of this creative tension that I've been describing that lays at the heart of Cohen's power? So in the conclusion to Ruth Weiss's eulogy for Cohen, she writes, the Jewish people had found in him what it was looking for, you for the communal Shabbat and you for their private pleasures. And then she continues, my eulogy joins the stream that has never stopped since his death on November 7th. I wish he could have seen the tributes by Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Reuven Rivlin, the man who wrote, hey, that's no way to say goodbye, was taken leave of by his immediate family in a manner that he presumably chose and that became him. He was buried privately in the Montreal cemetery of the Shar HaShomayim synagogue, where he had once davened with his family. And I think one can look at Cohen's work and see in it one of the main threads is a kind of consistent, sustained interpretation of our liturgy, always making it appropriate to our contemporary situation. And in doing that, Leonard Cohen, of course, follows the path of some of the greatest Jewish thinkers of our history. Thank you.
I checked with the president, and we have at least one of the songs that we're going to do, which is?
We will do If It Be Your Will.
If It Be Your Will.
We should.
And we were going to ask you, Richard, if you'll stay with us, if you want to comment after if it be your will.
If it be your will that I speak no more, and my voice be still as it was before, I will speak no more. I shall abide until I am spoken for. If it be your will, if it be your will that a voice be true from this broken hill, I will sing to you. From this broken hill, all your praises they shall ring. If it be your will we sing. If it be your will, if there is a choice, let the rivers fill, let the hills rejoice, let your mercy spill on all these burning hearts in hell. If it be your will to make us well and draw us near and bind us tight, all your children here in their rags of light, in our rags of light, all dressed to kill and end this night, if it be your will, and end this night, if it be your will. Oh, if it be your will, if it be your will.
If I could just add to what you to this text, there is a very important, I think, opposition or antinomy in Cohen between concealment and revelation. And so in Who by Fire, remember he ends each of the stanzas of the poem by saying, and who shall I say is calling? Now the Unatana Tokef itself, there's absolutely no question who is calling, so to speak. But Cohen leaves it hidden and concealed amidst the revealed things that happen or could happen. Someone who dies of barbiturates or suicide or all the things that he describes. And then, of course, he leaves out the most important, well, one of the most important components of the Unatana Tokef when he doesn't include the conclusion of the Unatana Tokef, which as we go through the citation of all the possibilities of us passing away, of dying, of succeeding, remember, it ends with the statement that there are only three ways to lessen the severity of the decree. And those, of course, are tshuva, the turning in repentance, tefillah, prayer, and tzedakah. And those are the things which, in a sense, transcend the harshness of the decree that is made during Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. So he conceals that at the end. And likewise, who is the you that Cohen addresses? And I thought for sure that it would be capitalized. If it be your will with a capital Y, but it isn't, because he conceals the sacred as part of this opposition, this antinomy between revelation and concealment.
Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. I'm sure there will be many people reflecting on your words and your bringing not only the reading list, the viewing list, but the many ideas you've educated us with, and our new understanding of, a deeper understanding of Leonard Cohen. And you're teaching us so much about how to read and understand Leonard's Cohen's work. And thank you for being with us and presenting these ideas to us tonight. We are going to be returning to our congregational mode. This is what I would call the extended sermon. I will just add a note that in addition to this yahrzeit of Leonard Cohen, we'll be reciting Kaddish in just a moment. I wanted to reflect for just a moment with you about the fact that this week was also what has been a misnomer in Jewish history, Kristallnacht. Normally I've spoken at some length about this event that took place November 1938. Another one of the key ideas that I would always say about how we should think about things is, I would add it in the category of what Richard was talking about, the tensions. Here I would add that there's always something unknown, something left unsaid, something that remains to be discovered. And this year, as we reflect on what I think is more properly understood as how the German people have come to call this night, not something romantic with the sound of Kristallnacht, but more properly, I think, Reich Pogromnacht, the pogrom that took place, organized by the government of the Reich, of the government of 1938, Hitler's Germany, which opened the way to what was to follow, and there's much to be said about that. The revelation this year are of photographs that were transmitted this year from a American GI to Yad Vashem. I don't know about you, but my first encounter with everything about that period of time was as a child, black and white photos. But of that particular November 9, 1938, from outside the synagogues, as people watched the burning of the synagogues, of firemen and crowds gathered outside doing nothing. These photographs are of people in Nuremberg carrying books, Torot, religious artifacts to the pyre from inside. And what, of course, one has to reckon with are the faces. And that, of course, changes something about what we see. I reflected on that. They've published some of these photographs. These people are recognizable. For the first time we see that people are saying, oh, that's Uncle so-and-so, Gustav. That's, and it's, of course, not young people, it's middle-aged people. I think it provides yet another perspective on what happened in 38. I think it reminds those of us that used to say before 2016, I can't understand what happened there. It could never happen here. Those people are so peculiar, I will never understand it. And I think that's all that I can say at this point after a very long service, but to say that this night of, this was a 2-day pogrom where not only were these buildings burned down, 30,000 of the remaining, at that time there were about 300,000 Jews left in Germany. 30,000 Jewish men were rounded up. That would be the equivalent of, let's say if you put it in the American context, of rounding up somewhere around 500,000 of the American men. So it was substantial. It was 10% of the population of the remaining Jews in Germany at that time. About 2,000 people murdered during the 9th and 10th of November in 38. So these are rather sobering thoughts, especially for us, given our most recent encounters with a form of anti-Semitism that we no longer dismiss because it's a sports figure or because it's a deranged person or because it's a person on the fringes of our society. And so we remember these events with great seriousness. We turn in our service to the concluding parts of our service, and we pray fervently for healing. I would ask everyone that is reciting a prayer for healing to please say the name of the person and rise as the cantor recites the prayer on page 22, the Mishaberach. And cantor, if you will.
And we're actually going to do a little something slightly different and do one more Leonard Cohen piece
Okay.
for our prayer for healing. Oh, gather up the brokenness and bring it to me now. The fragrance of those promises you never dared to vow. The splinters that you carry, the burden left behind. Come healing of the body, come healing of the mind. And let the heavens hear it, the penitential hymn. Come healing of the spirit, come healing of the limb. Behold the gates of mercy in arbitrary space, and none of us deserving the cruelty or the grace. Oh, solitude of longing, where love has been confined. Come healing of the body, come healing of the mind. Oh, see the darkness yielding that tore the light apart. Come healing of the reason, come healing of the heart. Rabbi, why don't we have some names? Please.
Polly. My cousin Richard Atkins, my mother-in-law Edith, cousin Marla.
And I will add my mom Ellen, my little sister Anna, and Rabbi Steve Robbins. Oh, troubled dusk concealing an undivided love, the heart beneath is teaching to the broken heart above. Oh, let the heavens falter, let the earth proclaim. Come healing of the altar, come healing of the name. Oh, longing of the branches to lift the little bud. Oh, longing of the arteries to purify the blood. And let the heavens hear it, the penitential hymn. Come healing of the spirit, come healing of the limb. Oh, let the heavens hear it, the penitential hymn. Come healing of the spirit, come healing.
I do. I win. Should I do it now?
Of the limb.
you, Cantor. We turn to the Aleinu, which is found on page 23, and we invite you to rise. We're going to be facing east, if you would like, which is that way. Please.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות אדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. We, of course, today mark in our American Polity Veterans Day, and we acknowledge the veterans that are with us and have served. We also acknowledge the sense of great sacrifice, the veterans that did not return from their service. Had an early morning conversation with a woman in Odessa as she was celebrating with some sense of pain and relief, which is the way you have to recognize these moments in Ukraine. The event of the evacuation of Kherson, I said that, today it's Veterans Day here in North America. And she says, yes, we're living Veterans Day every day now. And so it's with a great sense that we could never name all of our own veterans, and of course the sense of sacrifice. But the attempt to say that we owe a debt of gratitude for people who have made the sacrifice and have sought in good faith to protect us is important to be recognized. They teach us a lesson that's embodied in our recitation of the Kaddish. And so we join to recite the Kaddish for unnamed multitudes, but we also recite Kaddish for people who we do know the name of. If you'd like to recite the names of people, Polly. Larry? I'd like to add my cousin, Michael Sangfor. Invite everyone to join with us in the reciting of the Kaddish on page 24. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabba, v'yolmod yivrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chaye chon uv'yomechon uv'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agla v'zman kariv yimru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam ul almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudusha richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Amen. Aseh shalom b'imromav u'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. we acknowledge and thank you all. Please be seated. We acknowledge a special thanks to Dr. Richard Hecht, and we'll look forward to seeing all of you this Sunday when our president will be on Zoom for our Freighted Legacy program, which is associated with Beth Ohr. And we will celebrate the riches of our congregation in the person of Karen Goodman, who's recently celebrated her birthday, and we want to acknowledge that and celebrate the fact that the program is impeccably timed because it's the 100th anniversary of the play The Dybbuk, and we're celebrating the Dybbuk remix in the very artistic and ethnographically fine-tuned work that Karen will celebrate with us at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Be sure to register for that. It's a webinar, so you do need to get a webinar link, and Karen will hold forth, and we'll get the chance to see and hear, and can we kvell? Yes, we will kvell. The word kvell means we'll take special pride, so if that's okay. Can I ask the president to very briefly come up and say whatever announcements? You don't have to say anything about Sunday now.
Much appreciated. I had to discuss with my rabbi about how to handle publicizing my own event. So I thank the rabbi for having taken care of that. Pardon? Mike. Well, I'm not going to say all of that again. Okay, how's this? Is this better? Okay. Pardon?
I'm talking to the camera.
Oh.
We're just talking behind your back. Sorry.
Where was I? Oh, yes. So coming events next Saturday morning will be Torah study, and we will be here in the room, and we will also be on the screen. So you have your options for joining us. Please do, all of you. And that's it for now. Thank you.
In trying to come up with a good closing song, we should always end our Shabbos services on a note of hope and joy. And as much as I love Leonard, most of the songs that involved hope and joy also involved themes that probably aren't fitting for being in a sanctuary. So it took a little digging, but I think we've got one. And it's probably familiar to most of you because we've done it before. But the birds, they sang at the break of day. Start again, I heard them say. Don't dwell on what has passed away, or what is yet to be. Now the wars, they will be fought again. The holy dove, she will be caught again. Bought and sold and bought again. The dove is never free. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. We asked for signs, and the signs were sent. The birth betrayed, the marriage spent. The widowhood of every government, signs for us all to see. I can't run no more with that lawless crowd, while the killers in high places say their prayers out loud. But they've summoned up a thundercloud, they're gonna hear from me. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. You can add up the parts, but you won't have the sum. You can strike up a march on your little broken drum. Every heart to love will come, and like a refugee, ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Those of us who are here in person are going to gather for Kiddush Hamotzi. Those of us who are in YouTube and
Zoom and ZoomTube.
we wish you well, and we look forward to seeing you this weekend. I want to remind you that Richard Hecht has invited us to the Taubman lecture, and a very interesting lecture that you got the notices about, and you can join in. And this is a very interesting lecture that's coming. Everybody, if you didn't get the notice, I'll send it to you. Just contact me. I'll be happy to send it to you. Warm regards, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And before we end the stream, I simply wish to wish my beautiful wife a happy anniversary. I miss you. Oh, okay.
Before we end, let me add that Kelly has been declared the winner in Arizona.
Hey. Not that we're getting political from the Bima. This was a public service announcement.
The tweet of the day is, China has peaked, Russia is retreating, and Trump is done.